Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to another segment of Straight Talk with Grover Thornton. I'm pleased to be having another show. This show is designed to inspire, educate, and to inform you and to let you know how governments, national, state, and local, impact our lives. This show is sponsored by our Black Media Network, Julius Hall, President and CEO. Welcome again to our show. You know, our country is in a spinning spiral with the problem that's going on into our country today. Never have we seen our country in this manner. Recently, we just got through celebrating Independence Day. I have always looked at Independence Day as a day to do what I want to do because I have no allegiance to that date until this country fulfilled its obligation to African Americans. In 1776, we were slaves. The man who wrote the independence, Thomas Jefferson, who I think he became the third president, but at this time he was Secretary of State. He was an envoy to England. And he had this woman, Sally Hemings, was his woman, which she was a slave that he gave pregnant to babies after babies. And yet when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he was saying that all of us are created by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, we black folk have not had too much happiness according to the way we have been treated. You remember Dr. King said in his magnificent speech in Washington that the government gave the black man a check when he went to the bank. It was voided because of insufficient funds. Absolutely. And that's what we have been dealing with, insufficient funds. Now, in 1858, there was a debate between Stephen Douglas, he was a senator, and Abraham Lincoln. Stephen Douglas was the person who was a senator. Lincoln was trying to unseat him. Lincoln served in the House of Representatives 1 year, but he was not a known person. He was just an ordinary individual representative.
So you're talking about the Lincoln-Douglas debate?
And before we got to the Lincoln-Douglas debate, Lincoln stated in the debate that this country cannot survive slave and free. It either has to be one or the other. And Lincoln criticized Douglas because Douglas made a statement about the Declaration of Independence. He said that the Negro had no share in the Declaration of Independence. And of course, Lincoln criticized it very greatly for that and said that he was blowing the moral light out among us. You know, this is not a religious program, and I am a straight talker. That's just where I am. I'm cut from the fabric of working for the unborn generations of black children. And my age now, going on 90 years old, and I thank God for all the work I've done since I was 17 to make this community a better place and to have people love one another. As I stated, this is not a religious program, but whenever I can invoke God, believe me, I'm going to do it. I don't care who says what they want to say. I'm going to do that. Now, you know, on Communion Sunday, I was in church, and my pastor was preaching. Reverend Tillman, Dr. Tillman, was preaching a sermon, one of the best sermons I ever heard him preach.
Wow!
And it was so magnificently because it was right in the period, right after the Declaration of Independence. Wow! That's what made it so significant to me.
And who was your pastor?
Reverend Tillman, Thurman Tillman,
First
African Baptist Church.
Right.
And the subject was being free. You think of any more thing that's so magnificent than that? And he drew his sermon from the 8th chapter of John, when Jesus was saying, when he will set you free, and when you're free, you are free indeed. And there we are talking about the Declaration of Independence. But you know what he did? He took that Declaration of Independence and he paralyzed it with you are free when Jesus set you free. So he went from independence to dependency. So who were dependent on God? When I took the dictionary this morning, just to review what, let me see what the word dependency means. And it said depend. You're dependent on someone for support. We're dependent on God. And how did God, we depended on God. God brought us through all these trials and tribulations. Like when you think about Voting Rights Act, think about the March on Washington, think about the March on Selma, you think about the Civil Rights Movement. Yes. People went to jail, and you think about the young man was slaughtered in Mississippi. Emmett Till said he whistled at a woman, and they have taken young girls in slavery from 1619 to 1863. Over 244 years, any young lady when she reached the puberty age, then they were pregnant her with babies after babies and going to the market and buying women. And then they slaughtered this young man, 14 years old, said he whistled at a woman. My Lord. Boy, the thing that this country is going to have to bear. You're talking about this country is going more and more towards Sodom and Gomorrah. We're moving more of Sodom and Gomorrah. God is sick and tired of the way his children are being treated. So I just had to mention about that sermon. It was so magnificent that how God, we depended on God for all the liberation that we have ever received. It came from the hands of Almighty God. Look what Moses brought the children out of Egypt. Look what Dr. King took the leadership. Look what the NAACP did. I want folk to understand that we would not be where we are today if it had not been for good, fine, decent white people. Y'all keep that in mind. The NAACP was not started by black people. It was started by white people. That's what started. They brought in a lot of the leaders, like the boards and others. And the NAACP got started. So I just had to mention about that sermon. It was so magnificent.
Well, I hope he recorded it. I hope it's recorded.
I don't know whether Dr. Tillman recorded it or not, but it stuck in my mind that I could not hardly rest all that day. I got everyone I talked to. I talked about that sermon. I never saw the Declaration of Independence so parallel with freedom.
We're coming from First African, the first church built in North America.
And Jesus, amazing. Yes. Amazing. And Jesus saying, when you do this, you're free and free indeed. Because God led us. I just had to mention that. It was a magnificent sermon. Never saw it tied in like that before. Never.
Well, I see you have some listeners here from First African Baptist Church. And Brother Rayshawn Lawrence says that it was recorded. So thank you for that information. It was recorded. We can get a copy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, my mind was so fixed on that sermon. I all day long I talked about it.
Awesome.
I was just carried away with it. And I thank God for him for preaching such a wonderful sermon.
It is on their page.
And when you think about the areas and things that black folk had to do, like the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage, where they just stacked black folk in a warehouse, might as well say, and they shipped them in and tied them on the ships with their line and their feces and urine and all of that. And then many of them jumped off the ship and drowned, eaten by sharks, rather than be tied down. They had them chained together on the floor. And once in a while, they let them up to eat and do a little exercise, jumping and exercising, and right back again, tying on one another. We have been through some suffering. And that's why we as a people, we're the only people in the world that ever been treated that way, couldn't read or anything, punished. And we live to tell the story. That's God. You hear what I tell you? That is God.
Absolutely.
And I just had to mention that. And I thank God for the wonderful sermon that Dr. Tillman did preach to us. Now, I want to talk again this time about the Supreme Court. The recent 3 decisions that the court laid out to the American people. And as many of you know, one was affirmative action, student loan, and the other one dealt with the LGBT community. Now, I'm a very candid person. I go along with 2 of the decisions, but in no way will I accept, personally, the LGBT community, because that is against God. And I'm going to talk next month and talk to y'all some things and show y'all and read some things. Give me that book.
I think you said you want to take care of that next month. So
Well, I said I'm going to tell them. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, Ms. Gunn. I said I'm going to show them where it's going to be coming from.
I see. So you kind of
This is going to be coming from the Word of God. It's going to be coming from the Word of God on this LTGB thing. You just listen next month. God spare my life. I'm reading from what the Bible says. And this country is supposed to be based on religion, Christianity, where they sure have not shown it. They have all the money, and God we trust. And they have been trusting all the money for themselves and not helping people. Now, on the affirmative action, now they're talking about they want to overhaul the Supreme Court. And because one time the court was 7 judges. I didn't know that until I went back and read it. But now it got up to 9. Now they want to put it up maybe the odd number 13 or something like that. Some people for it, some of it, but it'd be a long time to do that, even if they did do it, because it has to go to all the states, and all you got to get 3/4 of the legislatures to approve that. Then it would go into the Constitution. But anyway, the affirmative action case is not just like the president said, and people got to realize this. This case really was brought into being by the Asian person. African American, Asians, and the Latinos are minority people in this country. And for some reason, the Asian people thought they were giving a black person, a free way into the school, this Ivy League school. A lot of them know better than the universities of Georgia, Mississippi, or any others. But it's an old school bill. They started in the 1800s. That's what makes them so insignificant. And many of the presidents went to Harvard. Many of them presidents. Well, you had President Woodrow Wilson. He was not a racist. He went to Princeton. When I read about him, I was disgusted. He didn't want black folk to even work in the postal service. Did you know that? Oh, yeah. The president of the United States, the leader of the free world. Black folk have had some things to deal with. You hear what I tell you, Mr. Gunn? Absolutely. Now, anyway, so the affirmative action did not give black folk a free ride into the school. I was reading an article today where the man was saying most of the people that went to those schools were upper class blacks who had money to do this. And many of the white people and their children in that school, they're in there because their daddy gave millions and millions of dollars, these corporations, and money that black folk worked 400 years to give them. And they'll look at it and listen, they applied to the school. Oh, this is Mr. John Joe's daughter. He graduated from this school, 18, so. He gave us much money, all that. Gets into the school. And I want you to know this, that the entrance to the school and the entry did not have anything to do with academics.
Money, entitlement.
Many of the students were above the Asian people intellectually and the highest score. Because the Supreme Court ruled, because of so many years of discrimination, that race could be considered. And the surprising thing to me, that sorry Supreme Court Judge Thomas, he voted against, but he admitted that he went to school on affirmative action. So if it was good for him, why not good for anybody else? I can't rationale that.
Total hypocrisy.
I can't understand that about affirmative action. But it had nothing at all to do with a person's economic, but the academic ability.
So he rode the wave of affirmative action to get in. But once he got there, he decided to close the door.
Yeah, he just wanted to close the door when he got there. But the fact of the matter is simply this, that they will try to do diversity in some type of way to keep a certain amount of African Americans and minority students into the schools. It's unfortunate that the Asian student did that. It had nothing to do with that. One man said, I'm going to say exactly what it is. They were just outdone by the black person, was much smarter than them, and that's why they did what they did. Wow. And the court went around. Now, year before, they voted conservative court against abortion that had been in the country for over 50 years. Now, to me, that's a woman's choice. You got to deal with God with that. But like Thurgood Marshall said one time, they raised all this hell about abortion. And when the babies come into the world, they got to raise the taxes and they have to feed them and take care of them. Then they want to have the cake and eat it too. So either way, you was on the losing side. But that's an individual choice. But that Thurgood Marshall said this, and one of his decisions, we need to send it. He said this, that the government has no right in a man's bedroom, and they has no right to tell a man what to read. And look what DeSantis is doing right now in Florida. Who wants him president? Who wants him president? He does not want the white children to read about black suffering by white people. He don't want these children to do that.
Critical race theory.
Yeah, critical race theory. He does not want the white
Georgia
children.
doesn't either. Georgia passed.
Oh,
the law
Georgia
last
too.
April.
All these southern people don't want the white children to know. A man called me one day, and I answered the phone, and he said, "Mr. Thornton, please." I said, "This is he, sir. What do you wish to hear from me?" He said, "Mr. Thornton, you know, this country's in a mess, and this race." I said, Hold it right there, sir. Hold it right where you are. I said, the problem with the critical race theory is you all don't want these white children to know how bad y'all treated black people. Like y'all were inhuman people to black people. He hung the phone up.
Well, look at the states. You got Georgia, you got Florida, you got Texas, you got Louisiana. If you look at the map of the nation, all the critical race states are the exact same slave states. There's nothing new. They're the same death penalty states.
Sure
they're
is.
the same ones for slavery, so that we have to stay focused and awoke because they're coming your way. Always be guardians of your freedom. They're coming to your state next. We cannot receive any books in the university system of Georgia having to do with Black history. So library systems all the way from pre-K all the way to higher learning are donating these books because they can no longer be on the shelves. Teachers can no longer teach in Georgia.
And the fact of the matter is they don't want children to read.
Yes.
Just like I was looking at TV one day, and these two white girls, they were showing something happened in the past. These two white girls were drinking water from the fountains. Mm-hmm. So one white girl went over to the black fountain, and she drank water from it. And her friend said, "Well, you know, you want to drink out that water." She said, "What's different? I don't see no different than the teas." Uh-huh. See? That's the ignorance on their part. Absolutely. That's ignorance. And Mr. Trump, what shocked me the other day, when they passed that decision last year on abortion, the man stated this. He said he did not name the states, someone with the battleground states. He said if African Americans had gotten up off their butts and voted, Mrs. Clinton would have won that presidency. Donald Trump won because of the electoral votes, but Clinton had more popular votes. And I hope that would happen one day. I don't know when the president be elected by the popular votes like everybody else is elected. Only by this electoral vote. Well, that was put in place because the smaller states were under the impression that the larger state would take advantage of them because of the population, etc. But that's what they did. Hopefully one day that will be eradicated, but I don't see that happening. Not in my lifetime. It's been going on since the beginning of the country. So that's going to be very difficult. But the fact is the Harris Foundation appointed these conservative judges. And if these white women and men that gotten out of the suburbs and voted for Ms. Clinton with that foolishness that they didn't want Ms. Clinton, they wanted Trump. And you saw what Trump did. The Harris Foundation and all the lawyers and they appointed, told Trump, these are the people you want to serve conservative. Because that group is an ultra-conservative group of people. And that's what they did. If they got out and voted, we don't want Ms. Clinton. We don't want Ms. Clinton. We've had women president of great countries. Look at the woman who was the president of Germany. Look at the lady Mahel of Israel. She carried that country through a 6-day war with all those 6 countries.
Of course women can do it. Of course we can.
And not only that, you had Margaret Thatcher. Yeah. She was the prime minister. It's just like the presidency. And they didn't want Ms. Clinton. They got Trump. So they got just what they wanted. And he turned around and appointed all of those 3 conservative judges because that's what the Heritage Foundation wanted. And of course, you had 2 judges doing that lied. That woman, that Barry woman sat there and told that lie. I'm sitting there watching on the television. Well, if anybody thinking that I'm here to overturn a Roe versus Wade, they got the wrong impression. That's exactly what she did. And that Kavanaugh, when he was asked that question, he said, well, you know, this is case law. It's always been established, Mr. Chairman, and that joker went right there. They already accused him of taking assorted young women. And Susan Collins went there and voted for them. She felt that crying out, made that big of a mistake voting for him.
Well, they went to the department store and they purchased the crystal. There's a sign that says if you break it, you own it. So they bought the crystal, which was Mr. Trump, and they now own it, and it's totally broken. It's totally broken.
Yeah,
so they bought it.
They bought it.
So they own it now.
And if they had voted for Miss Clinton,
Yes.
that never would have happened. Affirmative action and none of that. And then over Clarence Thomas, he said more things like that to come. I don't know why they're trying to overturn things, and he being a black man on that Supreme Court. When he was appointed, Thurgood Marshall said this: a black snake would bite you just as well as a white snake. And that's what he has been. He has never voted for anything to enhance his raise. Nothing.
Thurgood Marshall also said, Mr. Thornton, when Clarence Thomas was still in the hearings, he resigned and told President Bush, I am out of here. They said, what do you think about Clarence Thomas? And he says, I don't think anything about him. But what I do know is that before he leaves this world, he's going to hear voices. Which voices? He's going to hear my voice and Harriet's and Frederick's and everyone that has come before me. He shall hear voices before he leaves. So I think about that all the time when we think about Clarence Thomas.
He's a terrible man. He didn't want to help his own sister. He did not want to help his own sister. So I want to talk about those two. Actually, next is the student loan. Now, the one thing I've been listening to here, which I have not heard yet, they have been criticizing the president because he wouldn't have a relief from the student loan. I thought that they could have had a much lower interest rate on the money that the student borrowed. The college is now so expensive, and that's why many of them got these loans.
Yeah.
But they're not looking at the fact that these people, let's take teachers for example, they're the one teaching their children.
Absolutely.
You can't get no ignorant person to teach their children. You got to have a person who's been qualified, so they struggle to go to school. And that the president say, they've been all this debt. A lot of them couldn't even buy a home, and if the economy better like that. It's just unfortunate. And then the president talked about all these people, like that Marjorie Green woman and several others, got money and never paid it back. Corporations got money and never paid it back.
So why not give our students an opportunity?
And why don't they help the students?
The leaders of the nation, the future leaders need
the future leaders of the nation.
Free college like other countries do. We can do it if we can give other countries millions, billions of dollars.
Well, and they can't do it for their own citizens.
Allowances.
And like I'm saying, like I just said, they are the ones that training their children.
Well,
can you imagine if they didn't have teachers?
We have to have the will to do it.
So it's unfortunate that's been happening in our country. And it's unfortunate that's been happening. And I don't know what the answer will be. The president, they're trying to work out some kind of other issues that they could try to deal with it. Well, I don't know how they're going to do that, but we have to see that, the poor always suffer. But they don't look at the fact that Trump gave the business community $2 trillion tax cut.
Wow.
They don't understand how the big oil companies, they have a quota. For instance, to give an example, if they produce 1 million barrels a day, maybe so many millions, hundreds will not be taxed.
Yes.
They get away with that free. No tax on so many out of that 1 million barrels.
And no mandate for them to
See,
put that into education.
That's what they do to get how they get money like that.
Yeah.
And they will not drill. They could stop drilling. If they drill more, then oil will be much plentiful for the country, which produces gas. So therefore, gas will be what? Much cheaper.
So they're paid not to drill.
But they got their own reason not to do it.
Wow.
Because they don't want to pay taxes, and they don't want to help the economy like they should be doing. But that's the price that we pay in a democracy, I reckon. Now, next thing I want to mention to you all about these magazines. First thing, give me this first one here. Now, I'm not a rat pack person. I just believe in maintaining history, and I have trunks of cases that I put these things in. For instance, look how large the Life magazine was years ago. I've had this magazine here since President Kennedy was assassinated, and
1963.
I've had this magazine here 69 years. Just one magazine.
Wow.
It took 4 days with American stock. It's a sad thing to read the whole magazine. Now this magazine right here, Now the Ebony magazine, the Ebony magazine right here. Look how large it is. It's very small nowadays. I've had this magazine for 54 years.
Wow.
I have them secured in a container.
Yeah.
Now, what I want you to look at right here, 4 boxers who were heavyweight champions of the world. Jack Johnson was the first heavyweight champion, and a lot of us know about Muhammad Ali, who died recently, and of course Joe Louis. Now let me just start with Jack Johnson first. He was the heavyweight champion back there during 1920 or something like that. He was very popular. He held a championship for about 8 years, I believe it was. And his biggest problem was this: white women loved him. White women loved Jack Johnson. And he had all these beautiful, fancy cars. And he would take these white women and go over to Canada, this place, and not to come to the South, but everywhere. And they got mad with the man. Yeah. They came up with Trump charges and accused him, jailed him too, and accused him of going across state lines for immoral purposes. All because he was a black man and had this white woman or white women. But you don't think about nobody slavery for 244 years. They raped black women. Absolutely. Went to the market to buy white women. Like when I told you about the book last year on the book about the slave girl. Yeah. When she said, he purchased me to be a baby machine. Sad. But that's what they did to Jack Johnson. They jailed that man. They passed some legislation that accused him across the state lines for immoral purposes. And nobody never pardoned him, no president. They even asked Obama to pardon. I don't know why Mr. Obama didn't do it. I never heard no reason why. But it was wrong the way they treated this man, unfairly. Now let's look at Joe Louis, who held the championship for 11 years. And I have some videos of Joe Louis knocking them out left and right.
Yeah, I showed a picture of him. Yes.
Joe Louis, right here.
Yes, yes.
Joe Louis was a champion for black folk. Let me tell you, when you cut on the radio and Joe Louis was fighting, you didn't have all them videos going to no videos, and like I went and saw Muhammad and all them. None of that was in existence then. And I can remember the man many years ago, like I back there in the 40s and 50s, John Dumfries. That was the man that was announcing the fight, and they started calling him the Brown Bummer. Yeah. We got our joy when Joe Louis was beating them white men to death, knocking them out left and right. But the only thing with Joe Louis, unfortunately, he had people that took advantage of him. He didn't know how to invest his money. Yeah. Women, they drop him down to nothing. He didn't have no investments. Nobody to help him. That's right. And what made me felt bad about the whole situation, exactly. What made me felt bad about the situation was he fought 2 fights, I know, and gave to the Army and gave to the Navy, both to the Navy. I can tell you one thing. He gave both of those purses to the Navy when they were selling war bonds and all to finance the war. Wow. And he had oh my God, he didn't pay no income tax. And I mean, the taxes that he owed the government was astronomical. And they didn't put him in jail, but they drove him crazy. Wow. And he got a little job at Caesar Palace, welcoming people and all of that. But he was really sad. But what I thought was this was my thinking. Looked like in the South, that's where we got our joy, because he was beating our white folk and black folk were being beaten day and night.
Yeah, I think so.
Raped, hung in trees and all of that. Yeah. And that's the only satisfaction we got when Joe Louis was fighting. Yeah. And it looked like to me some of those outstanding stars like Sammy Davis Jr. is used as an example. Yeah. I don't think during that time, that great singer died not long ago, Belafonte, they were nowhere in existence. But others back then could have started some movement to raise money to pay the federal government the taxes he owed because of what he did for black folk in the South. Absolutely. It was unfortunate. but he was a great champion. And of course, now you look at Ali here, you know about him. What he did when he turned around, he was cast as clay, and because that man wanted to fight, every man has a right to any religion that he wants to. You got to stand before God for yourself. Every man must stand at the judgment seat of Christ.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe in him, you got that right.
That's your right.
You have that right not to believe in Christ. But I can tell you this, what that book that I just showed you said, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man open, I'll come in and sup with him. So if you don't want him to come in, that's up to you. So what they did to Muhammad Ali, when that young man decided to go into the Muslim religion, they reclassified him because he would not go into that Vietnam War. He was a religious person that didn't believe in killing.
Rejected the war.
And then he would say that the Vietnam people did not call him the N-word and all of that. But they did that for meanness. For 3 years, he could have even had a better record. For 3 years, he had to pay money. He couldn't earn a living, but he had money saved because, and if he had his finances like Joe Louis, he'd have been homeless.
Well, he was a powerful conscientious.
But he was able to invest his money.
Yes.
And get by, but it cost him a lot of money.
But he proved the point that he was not going to fight in an unjust war.
No, he was going to fight an unjust war.
I have no enemies with Vietnam.
But if Vietnam had attacked the country, that's something different.
Yes.
But the fact was, basically, the one thing only, they did not like the fact that he became a Muslim. Yes. So what the draft vote did, they reclassified him for the draft. Yes. And he refused to be accepted into the draft. And when I was in the military, everybody stood up there and hold up your hands, and the man read, I pledge to do this, that, and other for the country. And then you was accepted. So he didn't hold his hand up when you and they didn't arrest him. He got out on a bomb. Yeah. But eventually, the Supreme Court found the man not guilty. Eradicated all that against him. Yes. And then what happened in the end? They knew they were wrong. Mm-hmm. So what did they do? They even had him to carry the torch during the Olympics, even though he was suffering physically because of that disease that he had. So I thought I'd just tell y'all about this man. Now, this is the last magazine. I really got a kick out of this magazine here. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Ladies and gentlemen, this magazine here. I'm going to tell you something you didn't even know. I kept telling my pastor and some other of my friends, I'm going to tell y'all something tonight that y'all didn't even know, because I didn't know myself until I got this magazine. Now, I didn't purchase this magazine. Last year, I purchased a heater from my office. Sometimes your little drafts are not there off the old folk used to say in my office when I'm working late at night, whatever. And they gave this to me for a year as a souvenir for purchasing the heater from Walmart. The magazine is one of the leading magazines in the country. Better Homes and Garden. Am I right? Am I right?
Yes.
Better Homes and Garden. One of the better magazines in the country. But let me tell you, when I started looking at it, because you get a lot of ideas for your house and what to do. And time I turned the page looking at it, what did I see? Watermelon. Watermelon, ladies and gentlemen. Watermelon. Now, why are you saying watermelon, Mr. Thornton? It was something, I don't know where it started, somewhere in history. I really don't know. I would try to research it someday, maybe. They always want to put down a black person because of watermelon. Now, to give you an example, that woman that played in the movie Hattie Daniels, Going with the Wind, she told him, no, I'll be glad to accept this part. But two things I'm not going to accept. I would not get in this Going with the Wind movie. One of the best movies that ever been produced, one of the most famous movies. Where Clark gave all the women that could play against him with him. And this lady, Janet Leach, many of them was screened for the plays, for that part in the movie, and she won. A beautiful woman. But Hattie Daniel told them two things I would not put up with. I would not be in this movie if somebody would slap me, because she was paying as a slave, and I'm not going to eat no watermelon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Grover Thornton loves watermelon. It's good for my kidneys. I love watermelon. So I don't know why they want to ostracize or criticize or stigmatize a black person because they love watermelon. And this is a white magazine. Well, this is a white magazine on this watermelon. But I'm gonna tell you something about watermelon does. Not only that, here's what look at about it. They have taken watermelon and this is a drink that they put the watermelon in some liquor. You see it? There's white folk now. There's white folk doing this. About watermelon.
So they upgraded the watermelon, huh?
Yes, and the last thing on this about the watermelon, I know I know the Jim script fell out. But what it says it's good for to keep you hydrated. It'll keep you hydrated because of so much of the water. And also, I didn't know when I was reading this page, the Jim Cook fell out on the last page, but it talked about how it treats you, keep you hydrated in the summertime and it's hot and you're out perspiring. It keep you hydrated. And also it says strawberries contain water to keep you hydrated. But I was a little carried away on the watermelon because that was supposed to be something that put down white people because of watermelon. Well, I love watermelon myself. I don't know about you, but I'm just trying to show you how they have taken the watermelon and advertised it in one of the nation's top magazines. Now, what else I want to show? I want to show my two pictures. Now, I want to show one more thing here, and I'll be through with my segment. What did she do with the pictures?
I got them right here. Just go ahead and start time.
I want to show you the liberators of black people. I got to finish the show.
She's got them. She's bringing them up for you now.
I want to show you these pictures that I consider men who have liberated black people. I have on my wall, which I showed you last year, a black wall of outstanding civil rights struggles and all of that, and including local leaders like Dr. Gilbert, W. Law, Gene Gass, and all these men that took the leadership to help bring about civil rights in our community.
How many do you think you have on your wall?
I have never counted, but this is one of the white men that was instrumental. That's Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves, and I'm gonna talk about him one night on the show about his life, the things that I never knew until I started reading. He almost contemplated on suicide.
Wow!
I have to tell you about that. The next person I want to talk to you about is John F. Kennedy. He was the one that spoke to the nation, and he sent the Civil Rights Bill to Congress. There was time that the slaves had not been free over 100 years, and Lincoln freed the slaves at that time, and President Kennedy. And then, of course, the last person will be President Lyndon Johnson, who carried out the civil rights in honor of John F. Kennedy. That's why you today can go to the library. That's why you can go in the movies. That's why you can do what we do right now because of this man.
So you're talking 1964, public accommodations.
This man brought in the Civil Rights Bill to eat the restaurants and everything else in this nation. Think about it. And I'm going to ask Ms. Pat, my associate here tonight, about something that we need to deal with in this country, in this city. And that is this. Lyndon Johnson carried out the civil rights of John F. Kennedy, went before the nation, and in his honor, carried out this civil rights bill. And what did he do? He appointed Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court. He did that. So many things. He started Head Start. He started all the voting, all these things to help black people because we have suffered so bad in this country. 200 and from 1619 to 1863, 240. Think about it, ladies and gentlemen. 244 years that we've been through suffering, but God brought us through so far. Now, at this time, I just wanted to let you hear some of the things I wanted to talk about so much tonight. Now, in Savannah, right here, I have Mrs. Gunn here, and I want to talk for a moment, the rest of the few minutes we have, about this square downtown that was named after this racist John Calhoun, who served in the 1800s as a vice president. Now they named him, put his name on that square, and that square is a cemetery of black slaves buried there. And of course, under Ms. Pat Young leadership and some other people, they wanted to name the square after a black woman. What first name was Susie King Taylor,
Yeah.
a woman who worked during the Civil War as a nurse for black people, and she slipped around and taught black folk how to read and write, and wanted to name that after her. We do not have not one square named after a black person in this city. And Ms. Gunn, who I'm going to be turning over to in a moment to give us an update on this, but the city council, you tell me if I'm wrong now,
Yes, sir.
but I read in the paper, where the city council voted 8-0 to remove that white man from the square. Now, from what I can understand, now you correct me if I'm wrong, that the mayor has introduced something to you all that they want to rename the square, or to open up the name of the square after me, John Doe, anybody else. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why can't he name that square after that woman after they took the leadership to do that? Now, where's that letter you're supposed to be showing me for 3? You say you're going to do something, you don't do it.
Well, Mr.
Where's the letter?
Let me just say this.
Tell everybody about the letter.
Let me just say
And
this.
be truthful about it, because we don't want
No,
no.
sir. We're not talking about the individual mayor. We're talking about a public square that belongs to the people. If the mayor of the city, Mayor Van Johnson, wants to put that process out, we have adhered to every process that he has given us and have been successful. So we've been in this battle, Mr. Thornton, for 3.5 years. And how did it start? Let me set the table. We'll talk about him, and I'm going to produce that. But I think right now, let's give him an update.
No, but I'm saying this though.
Yes.
Why would the man not want to accept what y'all?
Well, I'm going to try to explain that to you.
All right, then go explain that to the people.
I need to walk you through the process.
All right,
because
go
we
ahead,
need your
because I'm
help.
concerned about it.
Yes, we need your help. So 3 years ago, approximately, a gentleman came over to our square and said, why don't you go check out Calhoun Square? We also had a journalist from New York that also came, and she went on a ghost tour, and they talked about it being a burial ground. We checked it into it. My company is Underground Tours, and sure enough, that square downtown, Whitfield Square and Calhoun Square, there are 2 men that are sitting on approximately 3.5 acres of land that's burial ground of poor white sailors and poor white folk that came in and didn't have money to go back home to be buried. They call it Strangers Cemetery. That's at Calhoun Square. And the African American community of enslaved are at Whitfield Square. So let's be clear. We made an application to have both of those squares renamed. We wanted to call the one Calhoun, we wanted to call that Sankofa Square. And we wanted to call the square at Whitfield because of the enslaved. We wanted to call that Jubilee Square because Jubilee meant freedom. And so between the two, they said you're going to have a hard time getting Whitfield off of the square, George Whitfield, because he's the co-founder of the Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm.
And he also started Bethesda. I wanted to remind them that he started Bethesda with slaves, but they still said it's going to be difficult. So you have to have the art of compromise. So we compromised and we took Calhoun Square on. They said you're going to do better with Calhoun Square because he's from South Carolina anyway. So we should just get him off of our square. So we applied, and the city's rules said that we'd have to get 51% of those neighbors around the square to agree with us. And we are so honored that there were brave neighbors around that square, and we got 51% of the neighbors 3 times. But in the process of it, there are flaws in the process of how the city does that. And so we're fortunate that after 3 terms, back and forth, we found ourselves at an impasse. We talked to the mayor, we talked to the city manager, and 3 women came to our come Sunday. There was post 1 and 2, Alicia Blakely, as well as Keisha Gibson Carter and Bernetta Lanier and Bryant. And they said you can just get 4 people to get you on the agenda. So bingo, we went to the agenda. I'm so grateful for those 3 that told us the process changed. So when we got to the process, we got 9-0. We got 9 people, including the mayor, to vote to remove Calhoun. I was honored that evening on the 10th of November when the mayor did say, we're going to vote, but we're not going to talk about Susie King Taylor. I was glad for the vote, but we thought this would be an opportunity where they could vote on Calhoun. And a lot of our supporters, such as the three women from that post and others, they could have made a motion. I make a motion now to make this Susie King Taylor, but it didn't happen. They have a new process. That process is where we need help. We have gone through 2.5 years of that, and now they're opening it up. There were 15 applicants, and we're number 15 on the list. And so they're going to vote on August the 24th at 6:30 in the evening on which of those 15 names they will choose for the new square. It's not a renaming square. We got John Calhoun removed. I want people to know that he was an illustrious attorney, orator. He got that. But he was also the number one pro-slavery advocate in the nation as vice president. And a lot of people don't know he also designed the plan for the Trail of Tears for the indigenous community. So the walk from Georgia to Oklahoma, Calhoun did that. He had to go. So 9-0 was the vote. Now, the 24th, 6:30 in the evening, if you cannot attend, we need you to send letters to the city. You can go to our website and we've got a letter ready for you. And all you have to do is copy, paste, and send your name in and ask that you please consider the vote for Susie King Taylor. The city of Savannah owns the square. It is at Abercorn and the 400 block. And so it's on Abercorn and Taylor Street, interesting enough. So you're not costing a dime extra. You're not removing any street signs. You're not causing anything. We're just reapplying the principles of this public square. And so Taylor Street runs right across it. So we think it's appropriate to have the square. We need you to go to our website, centerforjubilee.com, pull up the template and send it to the city or show up and testify. 23 squares, Mr. Thornton. 22 of them are all white male. And we believe with all our heart that we need a woman named square, and we need an African-American square. So as Dr. Otis Johnson said when he supported this, and he is in support of this, he said, I'm going to help you because it's getting two things done at one time. We'll have a woman named square and the first African-American square. And so that's where we are. And we want another 9-0 vote. We want every city council person and the mayor to do that. And I do want to say kudos, Mayor Johnson, as well as Post 1 and Post 2 and District 1 and District 2. Not District 2, District 1, as well as Diedrich in the district. They have all sent in letters of support endorsing Susie King Taylor as the person that they would like to be on that square. I don't know if they've sent in other endorsements in, but we have an endorsement letter from the mayor, Post 1, Post 2, and we have support from District 1 as well as Diedrich in District 2. So I think that is 5, and we want 9. It takes 5 to vote, but it would be wonderful to have 9 to vote for a public square in honor of a woman and an African American in this 21st century. So thankful, to the coalition. The coalition to rename Calhoun Square is a part of our organization. It's not one person. It's about 40 of us or more, and we thank them. And Ms. Thornton, I want to say you came on the air last April this time, and I'm so honored that you have this show. As you approach 90, the fact that you can get up in the morning and do this research and do this work, you are the last of our civil rights icons that are able to tell the story. We have the beloved Mamie Williams, but she's not able to tell the story. You're still here with us. We thank you for your work. I remember hanging out with you with Chester's show, and now you have your own show. And I'm so honored to have been a part of that process. April to now, this is your second year. Thank you for this opportunity. We thank you.
Well, and I thank you too for, we have about 7-8 more minutes.
Yes, sir.
For that update. But still, ma'am, I'm very still, I got to say.
Yes.
Why should it be, we have nothing noted about Black people.
Yes, sir.
So why should there be any reservation about naming the square immediately in honor of the woman?
I agree.
The woman is, from what I can understand from your research,
yes, sir,
that they have squares named after her all over the country.
All over the country.
Is that right?
That's correct. Over 100 plus.
So that's what got me puzzled, ma'am. Yeah. I cannot understand from our leadership why if that woman had been a drug person, if that woman had been a professor with no character, I can understand that.
Yeah.
But a woman doing slavery time, slipping and hiding, teaching black folk, it was a
dangerous
dangerous to teach a black person to read.
She's a shero. She's a shero.
Like I have on my wall.
Yes.
It was in South Carolina, where that man back was all beaten by slave. I don't know whether
Yes.
he was a recaptured slave from the fugitive slave law.
Yes.
I don't know whether that he disobeyed
Yes, sir.
the master's commands,
Yeah.
but he paid a price with his back,
Yes.
with the lash.
Yes, I see that picture. It
So,
just haunts me.
Me too, it haunts me. But when you look at things like naming one thing after black folk,
Yes.
and black folk, all black folk don't get together, and you got to open it up to name it after somebody else, I don't get it, and I never will get that.
Well, I want folks to know that there has been a document of our process. We get asked all the time, are you going to go after another square and another one? No, not Pat Gunn or our coalition. It has to be considered as we move on. What we want this process to do is to serve as a blueprint to anyone else that wants to challenge a policy. Maybe down the line, we'll have some new generations to say, I don't like the name of that school. I want to change it. That is a Confederate street, Abercorn, Habersham, Bryan Street. You got a lot of projects.
See,
this is a blue ribbon model. And I see that Reverend Tillman has commented that Susie King Taylor will be a great name for that square. So thank you, Reverend Tillman. Please show up on the 24th of August and testify. Your testimony will be sorely needed. Yes, sir.
See, what got me, man? How many squares you say we have in Savannah?
23.
23 squares. At 23 squares, and you worrying about naming one?
Yes, sir.
As a black person?
Well, it's up.
It ought to be more than that.
It's up to our community. We own the square. The people own the square.
Exactly.
So come out and let people know. There's an election in November. Come out and voice your opinion. Do you think we should have one square that's an African American?
One square out of 23.
I think so. And so for 2.5 years, here's what we've been doing, you guys. We have done what Mr. Thornton's generation has done. We have agitated, we have educated, and we have organized the people and leadership that it is time. Savannah, Georgia, this is my last thing I'll say, is at a critical point. We're at a tipping point. The nation is watching. We have been contacted so far by Whoopi Goldberg. She's watching. We have been contacted by the Michelle Obama Foundation. They're watching. They're asking questions. Should we come into Savannah now, or should we come when you get it? We say we claim it, and we want you to come for the unveiling. We're going to claim this. Can't you see Susan K. Taylor in that square standing there with a statue and cloak? Well, then we got to get to that meeting, and we got to raise our voices and tell our leadership it's time for a woman, and we are ready for Susan
I'm glad that, because when I was your organization meeting for last year, when y'all give me that plaque,
yes, sir,
which I appreciate very much.
Thank you. Jubilee Award for you, yes, sir.
I was heading out the door, and I want to say that she has white people also a member of her organization.
Yes, they're 21st century abolitionists. Yes.
Yeah, this white gentleman said to me on the way out, he shook my hand, and I introduced myself to him. That's when the program was over. And he said to me, he said, Mr. Thornton, when are we going to get those rebels out of Safai Park?
Forsyth Park. Yes.
Safai Park.
Yes.
Those rebels.
Yes.
Now, I talked to one of the leaders of the city council.
Yes.
And I was told this. Well, that has to be done. That has to be done by the legislature. Well, the legislature is not going to arbitrarily do that. Look at Virginia. I cut on the television one day.
Yes.
I got about 5 more minutes. I cut on the television, and there they were in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes.
Cranes, big cranes.
Taking it down.
Taking down the biggest statue of all of Robert E. Lee.
Come on now. Yes.
They didn't arbitrarily do that.
We can do this, Savannah. We can do
that. That was done by the leadership of the city council, demanding for the legislators that this must be done.
Because the people said so.
Exactly, but you've got to inspire the people.
We are trying to inspire
the people. It's your square.
It's your square, and I can't wait to go out there once we get it. We claim this in our creator's name. We got to get this square. I want to, because you're losing minutes here, I do want to shout out, if I may, to my board my board of the Center for Jubilee, I thank them for being there. We have all of our officers listening: Peggy Hillary, Dan Chapman, Erica Simmons, Roz Rouse. I want to shout out to our coalition and the neighbors who are the heroes of all of this work. It's not one person. I want to let you know that we had people who live around the square that were big, Mr. Thornton. They risked their friendships with their neighbors to say, I do not want to rise any longer to a Confederate monument in my square. So the people spoke. It's time for the city council and the mayor. And I believe we can get them to do it.
We're moving in a new area now.
Yes, sir.
In a new time. And so that should be good. Never should have been done in the first place.
Well,
they would not have taken.
We respect the process.
They would not have taken a German leader like Ryan Heydrich.
Yes.
None of those people, Goring, or any of them, and put a square if that was the Jewish cemetery.
That's the lesson for new generations? Follow the process of the city government. But if you don't like the process, then you change the policy. So I want people to understand that we went all the way and we couldn't get justice. So we went to another side and tried to get the policy changed. And the policies were changed. And so that's what it's really about. So we have documented it. After this is over, we're going to have a party with a purpose and give it to the next generation. I'm going to go back home and finish my book, and I'm going fishing.
But tell me this, how can, before we close, got about 2 or 3 minutes here, how can we get everybody that does not have the responsibility to send anything like you send on the computer?
Yes, sir.
We need to put letters or something in church or something where they could sign.
We have them, and we'll get them to you. They're printed and ready.
Sign and send mail to the city government.
Great idea. We have them. We'll print them. I hope my board is listening. We'll send them out to get them there. And if you can't, then come to City Council 6:30 on August 24th. And if you want to come afterwards and want to have dinner with us at Susie King Taylor House, come on, because we're going to have a feast afterwards. So come and show up and raise your voice for the new square. It is the people's square. Raise your voice for justice.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Gunn, for bringing that update. I've been wanting you to come for a couple of months to do that. And we're almost to the end of this show. And I hope it has been very inspiring, very educational to people. We try to do the best that we can and bringing you information that will uplift our community. And in closing, I would like to say we must work together and we must stay together, because we see that the extreme right is trying to undo all the progress that we have tried to do to make this country equality for every individual.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for listening, and hopefully to see you next month, God's willing.
I like that.